Dawnlight, welcome to Forfellingness Belysning illumination from the ancestors, guiding your path today.
Every day, someone's little girl, daughter, sister, girlfriend, fiancé, wife, cousin, mother, auntie, grandmother, great-grandmother, elder, disappears, shattering a family, a community, the world. There is something we can all do. Remember them.
Good morgen. Happy Mani's Day to you. Today we celebrate Mani. Mani, of course, meaning the moon. As we dawn a new week and we're ready for all the exciting adventures and learning opportunities that we have this week. Before we get started today, as we talk about the Frost of Niflheim, I want to take a moment and say thank you to all of you who have liked, followed, and subscribed us on whatever channel. Even listening to us live this morning on KWWP Radio, which is kwwp.org. I want to say thank you so much for all of you. Without you, we would still be just a one-man show, so I'm glad you've joined us. I want to give a huge shout out to my friends and family at New Reality TV, newrealitytv.com. Of course, a streaming channel dedicated to a plethora of perspectives, of different views of our spiritual journey, each which provides for us a different look and one that may resonate with you and help you along your journey. So, huge shout out to them. I also want to say thank you to Zeal-Pet-Foods this morning at the hearth and in the hall. Our four-footed kin deserves honest fare and fearless vigor. Zeal-Pet-Foods begins with real ingredients and careful craft, fueling bright eyes, steady stride, and playful hearts. Feed the bond, strengthen the pack, and roam further together. Learn more about Zeal-Pet-Foods and all of our other wonderful affiliates at akumedia.akoutlaw.com/sponsors. There you'll find a whole slew of individual vendors whom, as you make your purchases through them, you will support the show and, of course, the nonprofit Alaska ulfhednar. So today, we're talking about the Frost of Niflheim. And what does that mean? And what even what is it? Well, if we go back and we look at Norse legend and lore, Niflheim was one of the two. Muspelin was the fiery lands to the south. Niflheim, of course, to the north. And as these two met here in the middle, they produced a place called Gunning Gap. Now, this gap essentially melted the two together, with the frozen ice of Niflheim being interspersed there with the fire and the warmth of Muspelin. They kind of came together and therefore caused the mist, which also caused the creation of the first life, and that was Ymir. Ymir, of course, being the first giant, ultimately would lead to everything else that we know as far as people go. At the same time, we also had Mula, who was the sacred cow, who was discovered licking the glacier to melt it back and to free themselves. Now, ultimately, they would become, according to Norse legends and lore, the first life that we would have here in the cosmos. When we speak of Niflheim, we're speaking of a cold, of a frozen, which brings to mind this idea of being stagnant, of being locked, maybe in a decision freeze, unable to really see our way through. And so today I want to kind of talk about how do you free that? How can we break apart that overwhelming pressure, whatever it is, whatever happens to be going on in our lives, and really look at this idea that we can get through this. Remember when we spoke of in the past, we have spoke of as the emotional energy is kind of reconverted from biochemistry back to bioenergy within our mind. We talked about it happening in a place called the horn of feeling. And in the horn of feeling, of course, we had the negative byproduct at the bottom of the horn that I called the silt. And then at the top, just a thumb's width there at the top of the horn, was this place that we called the cognitive space. And what the cognitive space allowed us to do was actually apply thought to our emotional explosion going on, right? So we have this energy or this biochemistry that's coming in, being poured into the horn. This biochemistry would then be converted into bioenergy in much the same way. It would seem, if we could visualize this, would very much be similar to pouring root beer into a mug. As we poured the biochemistry, i.e. the root beer, into the mug, we would see this foam rising within the horn. And this is very similar to the expansion of the biochemistry back into bioenergy, back into its electric format. Well, as this thing expands, as this biochemistry is expanding, converting into bioenergy, it's kind of filling up the mug. And what's going to happen is if we don't control it, if we don't manage it, it's going to kind of just run over the space that's dedicated for cognitive thought, for us to be able to sort things out, right? So that cognitive space just along the top of the mug before we get to the rim rather, is dedicated to us being able to use some cognitive thought or be able to think our way through this growth of energy. Now, we know, based on our previous talks and based on what I was given in visions, that when this energy comes up high enough and it floods over the cognitive space and over the rim of the mug or the horn, the foam is then going to spill onto the surrounding brains, the surrounding thought processes, and the surrounding functions of the brain. This is where we see physiological symptoms, sweating, rapid heart rate, rapid breathing, all of those things, anxiety attacks, panic attacks. All of these are driven by when this energy comes over the rim of the horn. So how do we prevent that? Well, in much the same way, and this is why I love using root beer as my example, as this foam begins to foam, for those of you who have ever done it with root beer, when your root beer foam is rising high in the mug, you can lick a finger and put it in the foam, not in the root beer, but just in the foam. And what's going to happen is the foam's going to implode around your finger. The salt and the other elements at which are on your finger are going to kind of simmer that, just kind of break all those bubbles and settle the foam back down. Well, this is the same as a very clear parallel with the way we can manage our cognitive space. Is as this foam is rising into the cognitive space, we can use the thought process and maybe even some handy tokens that we can focus on that kind of helps us to drive that energy back down and kind of maintain control, maintain our mental control. When that cognitive space is kind of overrun by energy, right, the expanding energy, we have a very difficult time in being able to think our way through it. Many of us may have experienced this through heartache or heartbreak, maybe just unbridled anger, maybe even unbridled joy. Either way. So whichever way you are on the emotional spectrum here, you have a potential of overrunning this cognitive space. Cognitive space allows us to chunk this emotional thing down to make it manageable to put into the pipeline over to the me gate. It's a super important part of our thought process. Okay, it's a very necessary part of our thought process, is the management of this scope as this energy expands and kind of really takes hold within our mind. Now, you may remember there's a series of steps that are going to occur on our way to the horn of feeling. Following the horn of feeling, we'll have the me gate, and the me gate will ultimately decide what goes into memories. Now, the thing that we need to remember about going into memory is that our memories then come forward, right? Come forward, and then they're fed into future experiences that come in through our sensory input, right? So if we see a picture, we see an image in our lives, whatever that is, we have an experience, and this image is coming into our brain. As that image is converted from out here to in here, as that image is converted, we're adding our imagination to it, right? So now our imagination and the sensory input goes into the mood ring. Well, as you can imagine with imagination is there, believe it or not, for a very important reason. It's there to kind of help our brain figure out about the whole fight or flight thing. The whole fight or flight is a very important function that our brain has. Now, our imagination helps to drill down on a particular object within our experience. That's what our imagination does. So if we're looking, as an example, in our great ancestors as they wandered across the plains, and they were looking into some high grass along the ridge there, their eyes could pick up certain things, certain movements, certain color shades may be different, whatever. But our imagination would also feed into that. So we could put, with the motion and the shape, potentially the shading, whatever, we'd picture the predator. Our brain would put together the predator. And so this is a very vital function of survival, is this key to imagination. So imagination is fed into our sensory input, then fed into the brain, where it's then pushed through this, I call it, lens of the mood ring. And the mood ring, of course, applies our general emotional state energy to this now experience. All right, so we've converted our experience into bioelectricity. We've added imagination energy to it, and we've put that whole packet through this thing called the mood ring, which then adds its own energy. Whatever mood we happen to be in is how we see this image, is how we experience this, whatever it is. Okay, that then is then dropped into the well of the self. The well of the self is what kind of contains a lot about us. The well of the self has of course, it's constructed by our DNA, by what makes us us, by who we are. A lot of that may be provided to us via our ancestry, and certainly our our immediate, our parents. So that's constructing the well. And then within the well, we have water. The water represents, of course, our thought process, how how busy it is, how scattered it is, how trying to hold it all together it is. And that's really going to provide the texture within the water. Then, when we're thinking and we've got so many things going on and we're kind of scattered, we're going to find that the water is very tumultuous. It's very hard to see through, almost preventing us from seeing through, which means this light signal that we're sending from the mood ring down into the well itself is going to kind of ricochet up against the walls of the well. All right. So when it does that, of course, it kind of drags off some of the stuff that's hanging on the side of the well. This, of course, is probably not beneficial, but again, it's still added to that experience. It's still added to that. Now, this stuff that's coming off the side that's added to the experience, we're going to see again when it gets to the horn of feeling, as it becomes the silt within the horn, giving us less space within the horn to provide the conversion from biochemistry to bioelectricity. Right? So as we come down the well of the self, we're also going to discover our rocks along the bottom of the well. And the rocks along the bottom of the well are our values, our virtues, and our belief systems. And they're like rocks. And they have different shapes, different sizes, different slants and bends and curves to them, creating this kind of ricochet of energy coming down through these rocks, through these values. Each time the signal or the experience bumps into one of these rocks, the rocks adds or takes away some of the energy involved in the experience. Once we get all the way through the rocks at the bottom, at the very bottom of the well, that signal, this bioelectricity, is now converted into biochemistry. So electricity is now converted to biochemistry. The biochemistry represents our current emotional state at the bottom of the well. So we've had all kinds of manipulations, as you've heard, all the way down. And now we're at the bottom of the well. And again, our values, virtues, and belief systems have again altered this experience packet. And at the bottom of the well, the newly modified, completely modified sometimes, experience is converted into biochemistry. That's the chemistry, almost, that will arrive at the horn. The biochemistry that's released in our bodies, in our physical forms, this biochemistry is going to float up. And within the body, we have different chemical states, different balances within our system. And those, again, will modify the biochemistry that comes into the horn. So, as you can see, there's a lot of spaces along the thought process between experience and memory that has the potential of altering our signal, altering that experience, sometimes to the point where we couldn't even see the original, right? So sometimes it can be altered quite a bit. All right. Before I get going too much further, before we go to break here, I need to, that's right, let's look at today's rune. And today's rune is Perthro. Perthro is, as some might say, the Anglo-Saxon, is the P in the English alphabet. Perthro is a very powerful rune because Perthro includes just that evolutionary change within us, where we're completely altering a process, or maybe a belief, or a value, or a virtue. Okay, it's typically reserved for joy and fellowship, and just good omens. I mean, there's good vibes around Perthro, specifically when it's in its upright form, which is what it was today. Today, Perthro is bringing to us this idea that we can change. And change doesn't have to be scary. Change can be comfortable. Remembering the difference between turning on the light in the room before we enter it or not turning on the light. This is the whole idea behind illumination. And as we illuminate the room, i.e. we educate ourselves about the room, we're essentially preparing ourselves to enter the room without creating any more damage, without hurting ourselves, without hurting our forward trajectory. So change can be good. Change can be exciting. And we shouldn't let the Frost of Niflheim freeze us from changing to meet our environment. All right, we're going to take a real quick commercial break. When we come back, I want to make sure that you got some ideas and some steps that you can use each and every day in our modern day lives to kind of implement this idea of change and being able to absorb and get past this freeze that we may be experiencing with the Frost of Niflheim. We'll be right back after this quick commercial break.
In the air. The time is now.
We're all waking up.
We're waking up.
We're all waking up.
It's all shifting.
New vibrations.
It's you.
It's you.
It's me. It's all of us.
Together.
A new time.
A new day.
A new energy.
A new energy.
New reality.
Awaken with us.
Awaken with us.
Awaken with us.
NewRealityTV.com.
All right, welcome back, and thank you for taking that quick break with us. So today we're talking about the Frost of Niflheim, and what does that mean, and how do we see it every day in our lives? Well, of course, when we talk about frost and we talk about freezing, we're talking about typically being overwhelmed, and this comes down to one of two things are occurring in our lives. First is the loss of control. We feel that the control is kind of slipping away from us, and so we're kind of resigning ourselves to acceptance, right? And so we're kind of backing off. Or the other side of that coin is that we're overwhelmed, that we've allowed our emotional experience to overrun our cognitive space. This occurs all the time. We have blasts of emotional moments that have a tendency to just kind of and fill up our horn very quickly. And so without maintaining that cognitive space, without putting our finger in the foam of the root beer, we're allowing that emotional overrun to kind of take its plan. So how do we do this? Well, the first thing I have to offer is breathing. Breathing helps everything. Why? Well, most importantly, it's a methodology at which we can focus, we can concentrate, right? So if we concentrate on breathing in a particular way, making sure we do it right and doing this, that, and the other thing, what we're doing is we're taking away our focus from all these things out here, and we're bringing it down to a very finite point. So breathing in that respect allows us to deny energies so that we can focus. Secondly, it brings oxygen to the brain. At a very basic physiological level, we're bringing in large quantities of oxygen at which we can breathe and allow for that oxygen to get to the brain. Thirdly, we're giving this imaginary force, particular here on Midgard, we're giving this imaginary force called time its due. As we add time and we allow, what we're allowing is we're allowing the fizzle, much like the root beer, to kind of settle back down. So we're giving our cognitive space back, but we're doing it in such a way that we're allowing time to roll through. All right, so it's super important. So 3 very valuable pieces we're going to get from breathing. Now, in recognition of my Norse ancestry, I choose to take 9 breaths, and here's how we're going to do it. When we're taking our 9 breaths, we're going to take in the breath. We're going to take it in through the nose. We're going to hold it for the count of 2. And then we're going to let it out via our mouth easily. Think of when you're letting your air out, think of pouring a glass of water. Okay? So, hold. Right? This is breathing in, holding, breathing out. And remember, again, as you're breathing out, you're imagining a glass of water being poured. Steady, even, all those across. 9 breaths. Hold. Right? And you're going to do this. And again, what are you getting? Well, again, you're getting that focus because you're trying to get the breath right. You're getting oxygen to the brain and to the body. And most importantly, you're given time its due. Right? So we're letting time allow for that kind of shrinkage and getting our thought process back. And then, once we have our cognitive space back, then we can start chunking it down. Look at a particular situation that you may be facing, and you're going to take one lane at a time. Right? Don't try to address the whole picture. All right? All you're going to do is, overwhelm yourself. Right? So, just think of one thing at a time. Right? Now, if you're having a hard time and you're having difficulty in focusing with breathing, again, breathing, getting it right is important, but most importantly, it brings your concentration down. I would advise one more thing that could help you, and that would be a totem. Okay, this totem is of Odin, and of course, the Allfather is always available for us to look to kind of focus on. And again, all you're trying to do is you're trying to get into a very clean picture that you can then focus on, denying all this other energy and bringing focus to where you want to be, right? You're, again, as you breathe, you're bringing in oxygen, and finally you're able to kind of just really give time its due. All right, I hope this will help you today as we go about our day. We know Mondays are always kind of overwhelming, so here's a great opportunity to put some rubber on the road and actually begin this understanding of doing this. All right, I want to say celestial awakening, thank you so much for joining us on YouTube, and namaste to you as well. Thank you so much for joining. I want to appreciate all of you who have joined us this morning, and certainly look forward to seeing you tomorrow as we embrace the courage of tear. All right, so I want you to have a wonderful Monday's day, and we will see you again tomorrow. Love and light, my friends.